welcome to Lecture 8. Today we're covering cross-text connection passages, digital set and LCAT questions that require you to work with two short passages. So we're going to see how these question types appear on the test and how they work, and we're going to compare some strategies. These questions test your ability to compare, contrast, and synthesize information from multiple sources. They appear in the information and ideas section of the LCAT. So if you want to find questions related to that, it will be in the information and ideas section. So we'll cover how paired passages work, what are the type of questions that you can expect related to this topic, and we're going to compare some strategies and look at some examples. So you'll see two short passages. There would be up to 50 to 150 words each, labeled as text 1 and text 2, followed by another. So, this is going to be the format of the question that you would receive. Now, there are certain question types that you can expect to get related to this. The type 1 could be, how do these passages relate? How does text 2 relate to text 1? So you'll have to find the relation within these passages, right? The next type would be, what do both text support or suggest? So it is again, what is the claim of both the texts, or what is something they both agree on? Okay. Type 3 would be, how does text 2 respond to text 1? So whatever you read in text 2 and whenever you read in text 1, you have to can critically see if the author of text 2 would say the same thing about text 1, or would it be different, would it be along the same lines, would it be agreed, or would he disagree or something. So this is something that you can find in the domain of how does text 2 respond to text 1, and this response can be different based on the context. Okay. Which claim is supported by both passages? Again, you have to look for the claim of both the passages and see the one that is supported by both. Okay. And what is the key difference between these passages? So again, you have to find the contrasting point in these passages. Now, the claim that is not supported by both of these passages, right? Okay. So let's go through the strategies that I recommend when solving these type of questions. Step 1 is to read text 1 completely. By reading text 1 completely, I mean that you have to note the main points. Now, again, actively read text 1, note the main points down, not in a way of making extra notes for yourself, but highlight them and keep the main points in the back of your mind. Whenever you go back to the passage, it will help you analyze it better. And then identify the author's claim or position. Now, this is something that you can easily find in a 50 to 150 words passage, because the author is mainly going to talk about that specific subject. So, identify that claim, underline it, or write a small note for yourself that you can refer back to. Okay. The next step is to read text 2 completely. This means, again, read it completely, actively, note down the main points, and this is an important thing, is to find this relation with text 1. Now, all the questions are based on the fact how text 1 is related to text 2. So you can easily find it out if you read both the passages and analyze the relation yourself before looking at the questions, right? This will help you save a lot of time in that regard. Okay, the third one is, before reading the options, determine do they agree or disagree. Now, by agree or disagree, I mean if both the authors are heading in the same direction, or if they have opposing claims, right? So this maybe the first author is talking about something and the other author is talking about some other thing, and you have to see if they agree or disagree, if their claims are related in some way. And do they discuss the same aspect or different ones? Now, again, this is related to the main idea, the main purpose of these passages. So you have to see if they're talking about the same thing or they're talking about different things. And similarly, find some things that does one author support the other? Do they challenge each other or do they expand on one another? So these are again some questions that you have to keep in mind before reading the options so that you'll be able to analyze these better and choose the answer that describes the relationship the best. Okay, so let's go through an example so that you'll be able to apply these steps on this example and understand these better. Okay, so let's read this. Social media platforms have revolutionized how young people communicate. A 2022 study found that teenagers who use social media regularly reported feeling more connected to their peers and better able to maintain friendships across distances. While social media offers connective, okay, this was text one. What did I do? I just read the text and I'm going to now highlight what I found was the main idea, right? It says that social media has revolutionized how young people think and communicate. They are better able to maintain friendships across distances. So this is talking about social media in a positive light, right? Positive effect of social media. Okay. So let's go to the next passage. While social media offers connectivity benefits, research by Dr. Emily Chen in 2023 revealed concerning trends. Teenagers spending more than 3 hours daily on social media showed significantly higher rates of anxiety and depression compared to peers with limited usage. Now, we see that it is building upon this, that it is saying while it offers connectivity benefits, it still is not beneficial in that sense because it is showing higher rates of anxiety and depression as well. Okay, so it is rather about the negative impacts of the social media. Okay. Okay, let's see now. So we can see that text 2 partially agrees but with a warning. From here we see that it partially agrees, but here is the difference or here is the disagreement, right? It adds a bit of negative point for social media. Okay, so now let's look at our question. Based on the text, how would the author 2 most likely respond to the study discussed in text 1, right? So, how would author 2 respond to this? This is basically how it would respond. So, we have to just find the best option that matches what we think should be the correct answer. Okay, so let's eliminate our options. So let's say by arguing that studies findings are entirely correct. Now this is one of those examples of extreme answers. Entirely correct is again completely wrong because this is not completely agreeing with him, right? It is rather posing a different challenge. So we're going to directly eliminate this as this is not what we're looking for, right? The next one is by acknowledging the benefits while noting potential negative effects. Yes, it is acknowledging the benefits right here. We see here it is acknowledging its benefits and it's noting its potential negative effects as well, right here. So this seems like a plausible answer. So I'm just going to keep this for now. By suggesting that social media has no impact on friendships. Now, this wouldn't really say something because it has actually mentioned that social media shows connectivity benefits. So, this is wrong. By completely agreeing with all of text one's conclusions. Now, this is again wrong because the word completely is extreme and it is incorrect. So, we see that the correct option by process of elimination is this one, right? Okay. So the key strategy is to look for qualifying words like we see here, while, maybe, although, however. These signal the partial agreement with concerns and further disagreement. Okay, the type 2 passage is what both texts support. This is the type of question that you can expect. So let's read this. Text 1 is archaeological evidence from ancient Roman sites shows that women owned businesses and property. Inscriptions on shop phones in Pompeii list female proprietors, suggesting female had significant economic independence. Again, let's mark our main ideas. So, women owned businesses and property. So, I'm just going to highlight that. And women showed economic independence in Pompeii. So, this is the thing about women independence. Okay, legal documents from the Roman Empire reveal that women could inherit wealth, make contracts, and engage in trade. A third century papyrus from Egypt shows a woman named Apollonia conducted a major grain transaction. So it says that women could inherit health, they could engage in contract and trade. So this again shows economic participation of women, right? This talks about economic participation. Similarly, this one also talks about economic participation for women. So, based on the text, which claim about women in ancient Rome is supported by both text 1 and text 2. Now, both is an important word to note. Okay, we're not just talking about text 1 or not just talking about text 2, rather, you're talking about both of them in combination. So, let's compare. We can see that both of them are showing that women were actively participating in economic activities, right? They were actively engaged in that. So let's look at our options and eliminate the ones that are incorrect. So when women in Rome had more rights than women in Egypt. Now this one was talking about the women in Egypt, and this one is talking about the women in Rome. So let's see. This is not entirely discussed in the passage. This is not at all discussed in the passage, right? There is no mention of rights or comparison of rights. So this is a wrong answer. I'm just going to eliminate that. Most women were wealthy business owners. Now, again, this is one of the common types of errors that you can see in your answers. The word most is again extreme. So you don't want to use that because in the passage, although it doesn't say that most women own businesses or something, or small number of women own businesses. So this is again something that is completely irrelevant to this main supported claim. So I'm just going to remove that as well. Women in the Roman Empire could participate in economic activities. As we saw that both the texts were actually suggesting this, right? They were saying that both the first text and the second text were both talking about the fact that women were participating in economic activities. So I'm just going to keep this for now. And the last option is archaeological evidence is more reliable than legal documents. Now, this is a comparing evidence type of question, which is not the point of the text either, right? You see, you want a claim that is supported by both the passages, not something about how the claims had been told. So I'm just going to eliminate this option as well. And we see that the correct option is indeed that women could participate in economic activities, and this is something that is stated by both the passages. And again, type 3.1 is key differences. You have to note the key differences, right? So let's read this. Climate change is primarily driven by carbon dioxide emissions from fossil fuel combustion. Coal-fired power plants and gasoline-powered vehicles are the largest contributors, accounting for approximately 75% of the total emissions. Okay, so the text one focuses on carbon dioxide. Where is it? Text one focuses on carbon dioxide emissions from fuel combustion. Okay, so now let's look at the second message. While carbon dioxide receives significant attention, methane is a more potent greenhouse gas. Molecule for molecule, methane traps 25 times more heat than carbon dioxide. Reducing methane emissions from agriculture and landfills could provide faster climate benefits, right? So we see that the first paragraph, the first passage, is talking about the fact that climate change is primarily driven by carbon dioxide emissions, right? And coal and all of these things are the largest contributors of this total emission. We see that second passage is talking about methane. It is noting that although carbon dioxide is significant attention, it doesn't say although carbon dioxide is a significant contributor, right? This is an important point to note. And we see that in methane, this second author, says that methane is a more potent greenhouse gas, and the fact that it traps 25 times more heat than carbon dioxide. So if you reduce this, it could provide better benefits for the environment. Okay, so we see that text 1 is talking about CO2, while text 2 is talking about methane is more important than CO2, despite the fact that it gets more attention. So the key difference over here to note is that which greenhouse gas is emphasized. Here it's carbon dioxide and here it's methane. So choose the choice that best describes the key difference between how text 1 and text 2 approach the topic of greenhouse gases. Let's eliminate our options first. Text 1 discusses why causes, while text 2 discusses solutions. Now, this is again entirely wrong because we never saw the discussion of causes in here. Well, it is a discussion of cause about CO2, but we never saw the discussion of solution, right? But this means that text 1 is talking about the cause of some greenhouse gas, some kind of pollution, and text 2 is talking about the solution of the same kind of problem, right? Which is not completely true here. Text 1 focuses on CO2, while text 2 emphasizes methane's importance. Now, this is something that we have to mark as something that we can refer to later on as well. Text 1 is scientific, while text 2 is opinion based. Now, again, this is not opinion based. As you see, 25 times more heat. This is again scientific, and this is also not opinion based, molecule for molecule. So these things suggest that it is rather than being opinion based, this is again scientific. So I'm just going to eliminate that as well. And this is not a key difference, I would say. Text 1 blames industry while text 2 blames agriculture. Now, we see that it does talk about industries and all of these, so this might prompt you to maybe choose this one, but the main focus is rather on carbon dioxide and methane comparison. So I'm just going to eliminate that as well, and we see that the correct option is indeed the fact that text 1 focuses on CO2 while text 2 emphasizes the methane's importance, right? So let's go to a step-by-step summary, or I would say strategy summary. Okay, so firstly, you, while doing these kind of questions, read both texts actively. By that I mean that you have to note down the main points for both the texts, find out if they agree or disagree, or they different, or they are discussing same aspects or different aspects, right? Then you're going to identify the relationship before reading the options. Now, what I did over here was completely what I'm talking about, right? So you have to read both the passages and identify what the relation could be, and then go towards your options, right? Do they support each other? Do they have a different focus? Or are they challenging each other, right? Then you're going to eliminate certain wrong answers. Whether Now, these are the very common wrong answers in all of the LCAT or the digital SAT, not particularly for this topic, rather, it's common for the entirety of the text. So, you see that some answers are too extreme, maybe they're beyond the text, misrepresenting the main idea, and they focus on minor details instead of the main relationship. Now, you see over here that I eliminated the answers majorly based on the fact that they were too extreme. Okay? So, you see that in this one, I said that this word is very extreme. I'm just going to eliminate that as well. And in the first one, you saw that entirely correct, and this is again extreme. So I'm just going to eliminate that. So this is the elimination strategy that you can use. And lastly, choose the answer that accurately describes the relationship of both the text, right? You don't want to go for an answer that goes beyond what is stated maybe in one of the texts or that is not mentioned in either of the text. So the answer should capture the main relationship, not trivial details. Again, let's look at the common wrong answer types in detail. So the type 1 is half right answers. So we see that text 1 focuses on benefits while text 2 focuses on benefits. If they were the same, there is not a difference, right? If your question asks about what's the key difference, you are not going to say something that might be true for both the passages, but it isn't answering the question that you want. Type 2 is overstatement, overstated agreement, or disagreement. The fact that text 2 completely contradicts text 1. Now, this, if there's any agreement, this is wrong. Now, you see, completely, the word completely is again very extreme, and unless it is stated in the passage, you are going to eliminate this kind of option. And type 3 is irrelevant comparisons. You see, text 1 is longer than text 1. This is irrelevant to the content of relationship, right? If you're talking about two sentences, if they are about something about literature or any other things related to the passage's length, so then you're going to discuss it. However, if the first passage is talking about some kind of environmental harm, and the second one is also talking about the same thing, so you don't want any irrelevant comparison, right? You don't want the fact that text 1 is longer than text 2, because this does not provide any significant comparison in that sense. And lastly, beyond the text. Now, this is again very, very common in the entirety of the text, and the fact that both authors believe government should intervene. Of the first, you're going to see if both authors believe government should intervene. Now, this might not be stated in the overall passage if neither of the passages explicitly says this, so this is entirely wrong, right? This is something that comes from maybe assumption or any specific line in the passage, but is not been explicitly stated, so you're not going to pick these kinds of answers. If you recognize these patterns, the agreement patterns, the disagreement patterns, and the response patterns, and the difference patterns for both the texts, you are going to understand and answer the questions most likely correctly. So this ends our lecture on cross-text comparisons and paired passages in the digital essay or in LCAT. In the next lecture, we're talking about command of evidence. So this concludes lecture 8.